I am Avery, 26 years old, and the day I thought would destroy me became the beginning of my greatest triumph. My parents didn't just abandon me on my wedding day, they burned my wedding dress to ashes and left a note that would haunt me forever. But they had no idea who they were messing with or what my future husband's family was truly capable of. Before I share this incredible journey of revenge that changed everything, tell me in the comments where you're watching from, and please hit that like button if you've ever had to prove your worth to people who underestimated you. Growing up in a cramped two-bedroom apartment in downtown Phoenix, I learned early that love in my family came with conditions. My parents, Stephanie and Brandon Morgan, were struggling to make ends meet, but their pride was bigger than their bank account. They worked multiple jobs just to keep us afloat. Mom cleaning offices at night while Dad drove for a delivery company during the day. Despite their financial struggles, they had this toxic obsession with appearing more successful than we actually were. Our tiny apartment was always spotless, not because we enjoyed cleaning, but because Mom was terrified a neighbor might see any mess and judge us. The furniture was old but perfectly arranged, like a stage set designed to fool visitors into thinking we had more than we did. Every purchase was scrutinized, every expense questioned, yet somehow they always found money for things that made us look better to others. My younger sister Paisley was 4 years younger and somehow became the golden child who could do no wrong. While I got lectured for bringing home a B+, Paisley would get praised for a C-. The favoritism was so obvious it hurt, but questioning it only made things worse. When I tried to point out the unfair treatment, Mom would snap back with her favorite phrase, "Life isn't fair, Avery. The sooner you learn that, the better off you'll be." Dad was even more direct with his disappointment. Nothing I did was ever quite good enough. When I got accepted to Arizona State University with a partial scholarship, instead of celebrating, he immediately started calculating how much the remaining tuition would cost us. "I hope you're planning to study something practical," he said, not even looking up from his calculator. "We can't afford for you to waste time on some useless degree." I majored in business communications, a compromise between my dream of studying journalism and their demand for something marketable. Even then, they questioned whether I was smart enough to succeed. Their constant doubt became this voice in my head that followed me through college, undermining my confidence even as I excelled academically. After graduation, I secured a position at a marketing agency in Phoenix. The salary wasn't huge, but it had growth potential, and I was proud of the work I was doing. My parents, however, immediately started comparing me to my cousin Tyler, who had gone into tech and was making more money right out of college. "Tyler just bought a new car," Mom would mention during our weekly phone calls. "Maybe you should consider switching careers while you're still young." Dating was another minefield entirely. Every boyfriend was subjected to impossible standards and subtle humiliation. My college boyfriend, Connor, was dismissed as too laid back because he wanted to become a teacher. The next guy, Derek, was too ambitious and would probably neglect his family for work. I could never win and eventually stopped bringing anyone home at all. By my mid-20s, I had learned to share less about my personal life with them. I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Lisa Chen, who helped me recognize the patterns of emotional manipulation that had shaped my entire life. "What you're describing sounds like conditional love," she told me during one of our sessions. "Your worth to them seems tied to how well you meet their expectations, not who you actually are as a person." I had no idea that meeting Mason Sterling would be the catalyst that would finally force me to choose between the family I was born into and the life I deserved to live. The day I met Mason changed everything, though I didn't realize it at the time. It was at a charity auction for the Phoenix Children's Hospital, where my company had donated our marketing services. I was there representing our team, networking with potential clients, when I noticed him standing by the silent auction table, looking as bored as I felt. "You look like you'd rather be anywhere else," he said, appearing beside me with an easy smile that made me instantly relax. "Is it that obvious?" I laughed, grateful for the interruption from another conversation about quarterly revenue projections. "Only to someone who's also hiding by the least popular auction item," he replied, gesturing to the handmade pottery we were both pretending to examine. "I'm Mason, by the way." "Avery," I said, shaking his offered hand. We spent the rest of the evening talking about everything except business. Mason was refreshingly genuine in a room of people trying to impress each other. He listened when I spoke, asked thoughtful questions, and made me laugh more than I had in months. When he asked for my number at the end of the night, giving it to him felt like the most natural thing in the world. Our first date was at a small Italian restaurant in Scottsdale. Mason arrived in a modest Honda, wearing jeans and a button-down shirt. Nothing about him suggested wealth or pretension. He told me he worked for his family's business but didn't elaborate, and I didn't press. After years of my parents judging people by their status and income, I found his humility refreshing. Over the next several months, our relationship deepened naturally. Mason was patient and understanding, never pushing when I was hesitant to discuss my family situation. When I finally shared some of my childhood experiences, his response was validating rather than pitying. "They missed out on knowing the incredible woman you are," he said, taking my hand across the dinner table. "That's their loss, not yours." 6 months into our relationship, I still hadn't introduced Mason to my parents. The thought of subjecting him to their judgment and criticism terrified me. He never pressured me about it, understanding my hesitation without making me feel guilty. It was during a weekend trip to Sedona that I learned more about Mason's background. We were hiking among the red rocks when he casually mentioned that his family owned Sterling Jewelers, a name I vaguely recognized. "Wait," I said, stopping in my tracks. "Sterling Jewelers? The high-end jewelry stores?" Mason looked slightly uncomfortable. "Yeah, that's us. My great-grandfather started the company in 1925. My dad runs it now, and I work in design and acquisitions." "Why didn't you mention this before?" I asked, genuinely curious rather than accusatory. "Because people treat you differently when they think you have money," he said simply. "They either want something from you or assume you're spoiled and entitled. I'd rather be known for who I am than what my family owns." Eventually, I couldn't avoid introducing Mason to my parents any longer. We had been dating for almost a year, and he had already introduced me to his family, who were warm and welcoming. I reluctantly arranged a dinner at my parents' apartment, preparing Mason as best I could for their likely behavior. The evening was every bit as uncomfortable as I had feared. My parents were coldly polite, interrogating Mason about his job and future plans with barely concealed skepticism. When he mentioned working in the jewelry business, Dad assumed he was a sales clerk and made a dismissive comment about retail work. Mason didn't correct the assumption, simply saying he enjoyed the craftsmanship aspect of the industry. I wanted to crawl under the table from embarrassment. On the drive home, I apologized repeatedly. "I'm so sorry about my parents. They were awful tonight." Mason reached over and squeezed my hand. "Avery, you have nothing to apologize for. You're not responsible for their behavior. Besides, their opinion of me doesn't change how I feel about you." 18 months into our relationship, during a private dinner at a rooftop restaurant overlooking the Phoenix skyline, Mason got down on one knee and proposed with a stunning ring he had designed himself. It featured a princess-cut diamond in a white gold setting with tiny emeralds, my birthstone, embedded along the band. "Avery, you've shown me what it means to be strong and true to yourself, despite every obstacle," he said, his voice steady despite his obvious nerves. "I want to spend my life supporting your dreams the way you've supported mine. Will you marry me?" Through tears of joy, I said yes without hesitation. The moment was perfect, made even more special by the thought and care he had put into creating a ring that was uniquely mine. When I called my parents the next day to share the news, their response was lukewarm at best. "Well, I suppose congratulations are in order," Mom said, without any real enthusiasm. "Though you've only known him for a year and a half, that seems rather quick." Dad was more blunt. "I hope his career prospects are better than retail if he's planning to support a family. Have you discussed finances? Prenuptial agreements?" Their reaction stung, but didn't surprise me. I had learned to expect disappointment from them. But this time, I refused to let them dim my happiness. Mason and I were building something beautiful together, with or without their blessing. The months following our engagement should have been filled with pure joy, but instead became a constant battle with family drama. Mason and I envisioned an elegant but intimate wedding with about 100 guests at the Desert Botanical Garden in Phoenix. We wanted something meaningful that reflected our personalities, not an extravagant display designed to impress others. When Mason's parents, Victoria and Griffin Sterling, offered to pay for the wedding as their gift to us, I was genuinely touched by their generosity. "Your family now, Avery," Victoria told me warmly during dinner at their beautiful Scottsdale home. "Let us do this for you both." My parents, however, saw their offer as a personal insult to their pride. "We can contribute to our own daughter's wedding," Dad insisted during an uncomfortable family dinner, despite their obvious financial limitations. "We don't need charity from people who think they're better than us." "Dad, the Sterlings want to do this for us, not because they think you can't afford it," I tried to explain, walking on eggshells as usual. "It's their way of welcoming me into their family." "So now you're embarrassed by us," Mom interjected, her voice sharp with hurt and accusation. "Ashamed of where you come from and eager to trade up to a better class of people?" No matter how carefully I tried to navigate these conversations, my parents found ways to feel slighted and victimized. When we selected the venue, they complained it was unnecessarily fancy for a simple wedding. When we chose the menu, they questioned why we needed such exotic food when normal dinner options would be perfectly adequate. Every decision became a battlefield where I was caught in the middle, trying to please everyone while slowly losing myself in the process. I found myself apologizing constantly for choices that should have brought me joy. I tried including Mom in dress shopping, hoping it might create a bonding experience between us. We visited an upscale bridal boutique in Scottsdale where I fell in love with a classic A-line gown with delicate lace detailing and hand-sewn pearls. $3,000 for a dress you wear once? Mom exclaimed, loudly enough for other customers to hear. "That's absolutely ridiculous, Avery. I raised you to have better sense than this." The dress was actually marked down from its original price, and Victoria had privately assured me not to worry about the cost. But Mom's reaction left me mortified and in tears in the boutique fitting room. "Maybe we should look somewhere more affordable," I suggested, desperately trying to salvage what was supposed to be a special moment. "What's the point?" she replied coldly. "You clearly prefer Victoria's opinion to mine anyway. Why don't you just go shopping with your new mother instead?" By contrast, shopping with Victoria the following weekend was everything I had hoped the experience would be. She was supportive without being pushy, honest without being cruel. When I found a different dress that made me feel beautiful and confident, she hugged me and said, "You look absolutely stunning, Avery. Mason won't be able to take his eyes off you." As our wedding date approached, the stark differences between my family and the Sterlings became impossible to ignore. My future in-laws included us in family gatherings, asked about our preferences, and respected our decisions. They were wealthy but humble, successful but kind. The tension reached its breaking point at our rehearsal dinner, hosted by the Sterlings at an elegant restaurant overlooking Camelback Mountain. They had arranged a private dining room with personalized menus and thoughtful touches like framed photos documenting our relationship. During his toast, Griffin spoke warmly about welcoming me into their family and the joy of seeing his son so happy. "Avery brings out the best in Mason," he said, raising his glass. "We couldn't be more thrilled to call her our daughter." When it was Dad's turn to speak, he delivered what could only be described as a passive-aggressive masterpiece. "Avery has always been a girl with big dreams," Dad said, his tone suggesting this was somehow a character flaw. "Sometimes bigger than what's realistic for someone like her. But I guess this time her ambitions worked out in her favor." The implication that I had pursued Mason for his family's money hung in the air like toxic smoke. I felt my face burn with humiliation as uncomfortable silence filled the room. Mason squeezed my hand under the table, his quiet support the only thing keeping me from completely falling apart. Later that night, I confronted my parents in their hotel room. "How could you say that? Do you really think I'm with Mason for his money? I didn't even know about his family's business when we first met." "We're just looking out for you," Mom replied defensively. "You've always been impulsive, swept away by romantic notions. We don't want you making decisions you'll regret later." "I'm 26 years old, not a teenager. I'm marrying Mason because I love him and he treats me with respect and kindness. That's something you might want to try sometime." "Watch your tone," Dad warned, his tone cold. "We're still your parents and we deserve your respect." "Respect is earned," I shot back, years of frustration finally boiling over. "Tomorrow is supposed to be the happiest day of my life. All I want is for you to be happy for me. Is that really too much to ask?" They exchanged glances but didn't answer directly. Mom gave me a stiff hug before I left their room. "Get some sleep," she said. "Everything will look different in the morning." I returned to my hotel suite, emotionally drained, but hopeful that maybe we had finally cleared the air. Maybe tomorrow would be different. Maybe they would put aside their resentments and simply celebrate this milestone with me. I had no idea they were already planning their ultimate act of cruelty. I woke up early on my wedding day, a mixture of excitement and nervous energy making sleep impossible. The suite I had booked at the Four Seasons overlooked the valley, and the June sunrise cast a golden glow across the desert that seems like a good omen. Today I would marry the man I loved, surrounded by friends and family. My phone rang just as I was pouring my first cup of coffee. Seeing my sister's name on the screen, I answered cheerfully. "Good morning! Are you on your way over? The hairstylist will be here in an hour." There was a pause before Paisley spoke, her voice unusually hesitant. "Avery, I don't know how to tell you this, but Mom and Dad are gone." "What do you mean gone? Their hotel is just down the street. Are they getting breakfast or something?" "No, Avery. They left. They flew to Hawaii this morning. Dad had apparently booked the trip weeks ago. They asked me to tell you they won't be at the wedding." The coffee cup slipped from my hand, shattering on the floor. "That's not possible. My wedding is today. Today. Why would they do this?" Paisley's voice was small. "Mom said you made your choice by siding with his family over ours. Dad said you needed to learn a lesson about loyalty." She paused. "There's something else. They left a package at your apartment. The building manager called me because they couldn't reach you. He said Dad was insistent that you get it this morning." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. My parents had abandoned me on my wedding day, not because of an emergency or illness, but deliberately to punish me for imagined disloyalty. I struggled to breathe as the reality sank in. By the time my bridesmaids arrived, I was sitting on the bathroom floor in tears. My best friend Jessica took charge, sending someone to my apartment to retrieve the mysterious package, while the others tried to comfort me. "They've always been difficult," I sobbed, "but I never thought they would do something like this. How could they just leave? What am I going to tell everyone? Who will walk me down the aisle?" Victoria arrived shortly after, immediately enveloping me in a maternal hug that made me cry harder. "Oh, Avery, I'm so sorry," she said, holding me tight. "But listen to me. Mason loves you. We love you. And this wedding is going to happen with or without your parents." The package from my apartment arrived as the makeup artist was trying to salvage my tear-swollen eyes. It was a large box wrapped in plain brown paper with my name written in Dad's handwriting. "Do you want me to open it?" Jessica offered, clearly concerned about what might be inside. "No, I need to see it," I insisted, though dread filled my stomach. Nothing could have prepared me for what the box contained. Inside was my wedding dress, the one I had purchased with Victoria, now reduced to a partially burned ruin. The delicate lace was melted, the silk charred around the edges. Pinned to what remained of the bodice was a handwritten note. "Let's see how you get married now. Maybe next time you'll remember where your loyalties should lie." A collective gasp filled the room. Victoria's hand flew to her mouth in horror. Jessica swore under her breath. The makeup artist froze, brush in midair. They burned my wedding dress," I whispered, shock giving way to a bone-deep pain. "They actually destroyed my dress to stop me from getting married." The cruelty of the act was breathtaking. This wasn't just disapproval or absence. This was an active attempt to sabotage one of the most important days of my life. Something inside me shifted in that moment, a fundamental realignment of how I saw my parents and my relationship with them. As if sensing my thoughts, Victoria knelt beside me. "Avery, listen to me. This is horrible and inexcusable, but it won't stop today from happening. I have an idea." She made a quick call to her friend Diana, who owned a high-end boutique in downtown Phoenix. Within an hour, a selection of designer wedding gowns in my size was delivered to the hotel suite. Among them was a stunning Vera Wang creation that fit as if it had been made for me, requiring only minor alterations that the boutique seamstress performed on site. While I was being fitted, Mason called, having heard about my parents from his best man who had spoken to Jessica. "Avery, I am so sorry," he said, his voice tight with anger on my behalf. "Whatever you want to do today, I support you. If you want to postpone, we can. If you want to elope instead, I'm ready. This is your call." His understanding brought fresh tears to my eyes, but also strengthened my resolve. "I want to marry you today. I'm not letting them ruin this for us. They've taken enough." By early afternoon, a transformation had occurred. The new dress fit perfectly. My makeup had been reapplied to cover all traces of tears. My bridesmaids surrounded me with love and encouragement. But as we prepared to leave for the botanical garden, a new worry surfaced. "Who will walk me down the aisle?" I asked, the question catching in my throat. It was Victoria who provided the answer. "Griffin would be honored if you would allow him, but only if that feels right to you, Avery." The gesture moved me deeply. Mason's father had shown me more respect and kindness in 2 years than my own had in 26. "I would be grateful," I replied. As we arrived at the venue, the wedding coordinator approached with concern. "I've been trying to reach your parents. They were supposed to be part of the processional." "There's been a change of plans," I said simply, not willing to explain the painful truth to everyone. "Griffin Sterling will be walking me down the aisle." Despite the morning's trauma, as the music began and I stood at the entrance to the garden with Griffin at my side, a surprising calm settled over me. The path ahead was lined with desert flowers and cacti in bloom. At the end stood Mason, his eyes filled with love as he watched me approach. "Ready?" Griffin asked gently. I took a deep breath and nodded. "Yes, I'm ready." Despite the morning's heartbreak, my wedding was everything I could have hoped for. The desert botanical garden was in full spring bloom, creating a natural cathedral of desert beauty and wildflowers. As the string quartet played Pachelbel's canon, I walked down the aisle on Griffin's arm, my eyes fixed on Mason, waiting for me beneath an arch of white roses and desert sage. The absence of my parents created a hollow space in my heart, but it was quickly filled by the genuine warmth from everyone present. Friends and family from both sides stood as I passed, their faces reflecting happiness for us rather than pity for my situation. I had chosen not to share the full truth of my parents' actions with most guests, simply saying there had been a family emergency. When Griffin placed my hand in Mason's, he added an unscripted moment, kissing my cheek and whispering, "We're so proud to have you join our family." The simple sincerity of his words healed something broken inside me. The ceremony itself was brief but meaningful. We had written our own vows, and Mason's voice was steady as he promised to stand by me through all of life's challenges. "You've shown me what true strength looks like," he said, his eyes never leaving mine. "I promise to be your partner, your champion, and your safe harbor today and always." When it was my turn, my voice wavered only slightly. "Mason, you've taught me that love shouldn't have conditions or expectations attached. You accept me completely as I am. I promise to cherish that gift and return it to you every day of our lives together." As we exchanged rings and were pronounced husband and wife, a sense of peace washed over me. This moment was ours, and nothing could diminish it, not even my parents' cruel attempt to derail our day. The reception was held in the garden's glass-enclosed pavilion, transformed with twinkling lights and centerpieces of desert roses and succulents. During the cocktail hour, countless guests approached to congratulate us, unaware of the morning's drama or my change of dress. "You look absolutely stunning," my former college roommate Emma said as she hugged me. "That dress is even more beautiful than the one you showed me before." I smiled, not correcting her assumption. "Thank you. It feels perfect for today." The traditional father-daughter dance was reimagined as a special dance with Griffin, who had requested the band play Frank Sinatra's "The Way You Look Tonight." As we moved across the floor, he spoke quietly. "Victoria and I want you to know that we consider you our daughter now, Avery, not just legally, but in our hearts." Later, during the toast, Victoria stood and raised her glass. When Mason brought Avery home to meet us, we knew immediately that he had found his perfect match. Her kindness, intelligence, and strength of character shone through from the first moment. Today, we don't just gain a daughter-in-law, we gain a daughter. Her words brought fresh tears to my eyes, but this time they were tears of gratitude rather than pain. The celebration continued late into the night with dancing, laughter, and genuine joy. If anyone noticed my parents' absence, they were tactful enough not to mention it. By the end of the evening, surrounded by people who truly cared for us, I realized that family could be chosen as well as born. 2 days later, Mason and I departed for our honeymoon, a 3-week journey through Europe that his parents had arranged as a wedding gift. As we explored the ancient streets of Rome, the canals of Venice, and the rolling hills of Tuscany, the pain of my parents' betrayal began to recede, though it never disappeared completely. It was during a quiet evening at our hotel in Florence that I decided to post a selection of wedding photos on social media. Until then, I had been hesitant, not wanting to deal with questions about my parents' absence, but looking at the joyful images of our perfect day, I felt a surge of defiance. Why should I hide my happiness to protect those who had tried to destroy it? I selected a dozen photos that captured the beauty and emotion of the day, including several with Mason's family. One particular image showed us with Victoria and Griffin all dressed in our finery, the Sterling family's multi-generation jewelry heritage subtly evident in the exquisite pieces Victoria wore. These weren't just expensive accessories, they were company heirlooms worth millions. Within hours, the post received hundreds of likes and comments from friends and acquaintances expressing their congratulations. But it was a comment from the designer of my replacement dress that caused the post to gain unexpected attention. "Absolutely honored that my design was chosen for your special day," Diana wrote, tagging her boutique's account. "Avery makes a breathtaking bride in our couture collection." The high-profile tag led to the post being shared in fashion circles, bringing it to a much wider audience than I had anticipated. The combination of the beautiful setting, the designer dress, and the presence of the Sterling family, known in certain circles for their exclusive jewelry empire, created a perfect storm of social media interest. As Mason and I traveled through Tuscany, largely disconnected from our phones, we remained unaware that our wedding had become something of a talking point. It was only when we arrived in Paris for the final leg of our journey that I checked my messages and discovered dozens of notifications, including several missed calls from a number I recognized all too well. My parents had seen the wedding photos, and they were not happy. Our return flight from Paris landed in Phoenix on a sweltering July afternoon. As soon as I turned my phone off airplane mode, it began buzzing continuously with notifications. 99 missed calls, 68 text messages, dozens of voicemails. The majority were from my parents. "This cannot be good," I murmured to Mason as we waited for our luggage. He squeezed my hand. "Whatever it is, we'll handle it together. Do you want to listen to any of the messages now?" I shook my head. "Not here. Let's get home first." Our apartment felt blissfully peaceful after the long journey. We unpacked the essentials and ordered takeout before I finally worked up the courage to check the first voicemail from my mother. Her voice was tight with barely controlled fury. "Avery, call us back immediately. We need to discuss these photos you've posted. How dare you humiliate us this way? Call us back." Each subsequent message grew more demanding and accusatory. By the 20th voicemail, Mom was practically shouting, "You deliberately hid who the Sterlings really are. Do you know how this makes us look? Everyone can see that you married into money and didn't even have the decency to tell your own parents. We would never have left if we had known." I felt sick to my stomach. Of course, now that they had seen the Sterling family's wealth displayed in my wedding photos, my parents suddenly regretted their actions. Not because they were wrong, but because they had miscalculated what they could gain from the connection. "They think I married Mason for his family's money," I said to Mason, who had been listening with growing anger beside me. "And they're mad because they missed the opportunity to benefit from it themselves." "That's unbelievable," he replied, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "After what they did to your dress, after abandoning you on our wedding day, they have the audacity to be angry at you?" I scrolled through the text messages, each one more demanding than the last. The final one, sent just hours before our landing, read, "We're coming to your apartment tomorrow at 6. Be there. We need to discuss fixing this situation." "Fixing this situation?" I repeated incredulously. "They think there's a way to fix what they did?" That night, I barely slept, anxiety coursing through me at the thought of facing my parents. Mason suggested we simply refuse to see them, but I knew that would only delay the inevitable confrontation. Better to face it head-on and then move forward with our lives. The next evening at precisely 6, our doorbell rang. Mason squeezed my hand one last time before I opened the door to find my parents standing there, looking remarkably unrepentant given the circumstances. "Finally," Mom said, pushing past me into the apartment. "We've been trying to reach you for days." Dad followed, his eyes sweeping critically over our home. "So this is where you live. Surprisingly modest, considering." "Considering what, Dad?" "Considering you married into the Sterling family," he replied bluntly. "Why did you hide who they really are from us? Did you think we wouldn't find out?" I didn't hide anything, I said, keeping my voice level with effort. You never asked, and it wasn't relevant. Mason doesn't define himself by his family's business, and neither do I. Not relevant? Mom's voice rose in disbelief. You married into one of the wealthiest families in Arizona, and you didn't think that was worth mentioning to your own parents? Mason stepped forward. With all due respect, Mr. and Mrs. Morgan, I think you forfeited any right to explanations after your actions on our wedding day. Dad's face darkened. This doesn't concern you, young man. This is between us and our daughter. Actually, it very much concerns me, Mason replied firmly. You abandoned my wife on our wedding day and destroyed her wedding dress out of spite. Now you're in our home making accusations because you discovered my family has money. Money that, for the record, has nothing to do with why Avery and I fell in love. Mom waved her hand dismissively. We made a mistake. Certainly we were upset and acted impulsively, but families forgive each other. Now we need to move forward, make proper introductions to the Sterlings. We should host a reception for you both, invite our friends and family who missed the wedding. The audacity left me speechless for a moment. They weren't here to apologize, but to strategize how to benefit from my marriage. Let me make sure I understand, I said slowly. You left me on my wedding day with a vicious note and my destroyed dress. You said nothing for weeks. Then you saw photos showing the Sterlings are wealthy, and suddenly you want to play happy family and host a reception as if nothing happened? Don't be dramatic, Avery, Dad scoffed. Everyone makes mistakes. We were hurt that you seemed to prefer his family to your own, but now we understand the situation better. The situation? I repeated. You mean now that you know Mason's family has money, you want to be part of our lives again? That's not how this works. You can't treat people horribly and then expect forgiveness when you realize there might be some benefit to you. We're your parents, Mom insisted. Family is forever. The Sterlings need to meet in real family, not just get your version of events. Your version of events? I felt my control slipping. There is no version. There are facts. You abandoned me. You destroyed my wedding dress. You left a note saying, and I quote, "Let's see how you get married now." Those aren't interpretations. They are things you actually did. We had no idea the Sterlings would simply buy you another dress. If we had known who they were, if you had known they were wealthy, you would have behaved differently, I finished for him. That just makes it worse, not better. It means your love and support are conditional, not just on me meeting your expectations, but on what you can gain from the relationship. A heavy silence filled the room. My parents exchanged glances, clearly unprepared for this version of me, one who would not back down or accept their manipulation. I'm choosing myself, I said firmly. For perhaps the first time in my life, I'm choosing not to accept treatment that hurts me from anyone, even my parents, especially my parents, who should love me unconditionally but have only ever loved the version of me that serves their needs. Fine, Mom snapped, gathering her purse. When you come to your senses and realize what you're throwing away, don't expect us to welcome you back with open arms. I'm well aware of consequences, I said quietly. I've been living with the consequences of your conditional love my entire life. It stops now. As they moved toward the door, Dad turned back. This isn't over. Your sister agrees with us, by the way. She thinks you've been utterly selfish throughout this entire situation. It was a final attempt to hurt me, to make me feel isolated. But I knew better. Paisley had texted me privately after seeing the wedding photos, apologizing for not standing up to our parents more forcefully and congratulating me on my marriage. Goodbye, Dad, I said, holding the door open. Mom, I hope someday you can reflect on your actions and understand why this is happening. Until then, I need space from this relationship. After they left, I collapsed onto the couch, emotionally drained but also strangely peaceful. Mason sat beside me, pulling me into his embrace. I'm so proud of you, he whispered against my hair. That couldn't have been easy. It was actually easier than I expected, I admitted. Once I stopped seeking their approval and started standing up for what I deserve, the words just came. Over the next few weeks, the story of my parents' actions somehow leaked into our extended family and social circle, likely through Mom's distorted version of events. But unexpectedly, this backfired on them. Several relatives reached out to express their support for me, some sharing their own stories of my parents' manipulative behavior over the years. Most surprisingly, Paisley called me one evening, her voice thick with emotion. "I saw the burned dress, Avery. Mom kept it. Can you believe that? Like some kind of trophy. I found it in their closet when I was helping them unpack from Hawaii. That's when I knew everything they told me about what happened was a lie." Her support meant more than she could know. For years, our parents had used her as a wedge between us, playing favorites to keep us from forming a united front. Now, seeing the truth for herself, she was finally breaking free from their manipulation as well. As summer turned to fall, my parents made several more attempts to contact us, each time with a different approach. Sometimes they were angry and demanding, other times wounded and pleading. Occasionally, they would attempt to use other family members as intermediaries. But Mason and I remained firm in our boundaries, insisting that any relationship moving forward would need to begin with a genuine acknowledgement of their actions and a commitment to change. That acknowledgement never came. The months following our confrontation were a time of profound healing and growth. With Mason's support and regular sessions with Dr. Chen, I began to process the deep wounds of my childhood and the fresh trauma of the wedding day betrayal. "What your parents did was a form of emotional abuse," Dr. Chen explained during one session. "The burned dress was a symbolic act of violence against your independence and happiness. It's natural to feel grief not just for what happened, but for the parents you deserved but never had." That framing helped me understand the complex emotions I was experiencing. Sadness and anger tangled with unexpected relief. For the first time in my life, I was free from the constant pressure to earn my parents' approval, a battle I now recognize was designed for me to lose. Our first holiday season as a married couple brought new challenges. Thanksgiving at the Sterling home was warm and joyful, but I couldn't help feeling the absence of my own family, imperfect as they were. Christmas brought a card from my parents containing no apology, but a terse note suggesting we put the past behind us for the holidays. I returned it unopened. "Family estrangement is more common than people realize," Victoria told me gently when she noticed my melancholy mood during their Christmas gathering. "Griffin didn't speak to his father for the last 15 years of the man's life. It was painful, but necessary for his own well-being. Sometimes the healthiest thing we can do is create distance from those who hurt us, even when they're family, perhaps especially then." Her understanding was a balm to my spirit. The Sterlings never pressed me to reconcile with my parents for the sake of appearances or tradition. They respected my decision and continued to welcome me fully into their family without making me feel like I owed them anything in return. In January, I received an unexpected email from Paisley. She had moved out of our parents' home and taken an apartment with a friend, her first real step towards independence at 22. "They've been unbearable since everything happened," she wrote. "Dad lost a promotion at work and blames it on the distraction of your wedding drama. Mom keeps telling everyone who will listen that you married Mason for his money and turned him against the family. I finally told them they were being ridiculous and that they created this situation themselves. They didn't speak to me for 3 days. I think I'm beginning to understand what you've been dealing with all these years." We began meeting for coffee every few weeks, rebuilding our relationship without our parents' interference. It was healing to connect with the one person who truly understood the dynamics of our upbringing, even if she had experienced it differently as the favorite child. Spring brought a new development that tested my emotional resilience in unexpected ways. I missed my period, and a home test confirmed what I had begun to suspect. I was pregnant. The joy Mason and I felt was complicated by a new wave of anxiety. Would I know how to be a good parent without a positive example to follow? Would my own childhood wounds affect my ability to nurture a child? And buried beneath those concerns was a question I was almost afraid to acknowledge, even to myself. Should my parents be allowed to know their grandchild? Having a child doesn't obligate you to reconnect with your parents, Dr. Chen assured me when I voiced these concerns. Many people worry they'll repeat the patterns of their own upbringing, but awareness is the first step to breaking those cycles. You recognize what was harmful in your parents' approach, which means you can consciously choose a different path. As my pregnancy progressed, Victoria became an unexpected source of wisdom and support. Unlike my own mother, who had always been critical and withholding, she shared her experiences openly, including her mistakes and uncertainties. No parent is perfect, Avery, she told me one afternoon as we prepared the nursery in our new house, a spacious 4-bedroom in Paradise Valley that Mason and I had purchased with his family's help. The difference is whether you can admit your mistakes and repair the relationship when you fall short. Your parents never learned that skill, but you have. In my 7th month, I wrote a letter to my unborn daughter, pouring out my promises and hopes for her future. I would love her unconditionally. I would respect her as an individual. I would support her dreams even when they differed from my expectations. I would never use my love as a weapon or a bargaining chip. I sealed the letter to give to her someday, a contract with myself as much as a message to her. 2 weeks before my due date, an envelope arrived with my parents' return address. Inside was a card congratulating us on the baby, information they had presumably learned through family channels. There was no apology for the past, only a statement that they expected to be involved in their grandchild's life. After careful consideration and many discussions with Mason, I wrote back a brief but firm response. I am not willing to expose my child to the same conditional love and manipulation I experienced growing up. When you are ready to take responsibility for your actions and commit to respectful boundaries, we can discuss supervised visits. Until then, this door remains closed. It was one of the hardest letters I had ever written, but also one of the most necessary. Becoming a parent had strengthened my resolve to break the cycle of toxic family dynamics, even if that meant maintaining distance from my own parents. Elena Victoria Sterling was born on a brilliant October morning, healthy and perfect with Mason's brown eyes and my stubborn chin. Holding her in my arms, I felt a love so pure and unconditional, it brought tears to my eyes. This was what family should feel like. Not an endless quest for approval, but a safe harbor of acceptance and support. The journey from the burned wedding dress to this moment had been painful but transformative. I had lost the family I was born into, but gained a family of choice that showed me what love without strings attached truly meant. I had found my voice and my boundaries. I had learned that sometimes the healthiest response to toxic relationships is to walk away, even when cultural expectations pressure us to maintain ties at all costs. Most importantly, I had discovered that family is not defined by blood, but by how we treat each other, by the safety and acceptance we create together. The Sterling family had welcomed me without reservation, but the true gift was finding the strength to demand better treatment and the courage to walk away when it wasn't given. As I watch my daughter grow, I am grateful for the painful lessons that brought me to this place of peace. The legacy I pass to her will not be one of criticism and conditional love, but of self-respect and the courage to choose relationships that honor her worth. If you've ever had to distance yourself from toxic family members, know that you're not alone. Your worth is not determined by those who cannot see it. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do for ourselves is to walk away from those who cannot love us as we deserve to be loved. Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, please like and subscribe to support this channel. Share your own experiences in the comments below. Have you ever had to create boundaries with family members? What helped you through that difficult process? Your stories matter, and they might just help someone else feel less alone in their own journey. Remember, you deserve love without conditions. You deserve respect without having to earn it. And sometimes the family you choose is more important than the family you were born into. Until next time, this is Revenge Girls reminding you that your happiness is worth fighting for.